Hello, everyone. Welcome to Reiki Radio. I am your host, Yolanda, and I first of all want to welcome anyone who is new to the show. We are taking a 22-day journey through the major arcana. And so if you would like to do this journey with us, if you haven't started yet, I do recommend going back to the Fool card, which is the first card of this journey. So you can go back into the archives of the podcast and start. And then if you want to share your insights with us, you can join us in the Seeker Circle on Facebook. So just go to my website, yew-chi.com. That's YEWCHI.com. And you can sign up for the newsletter, get access to some free gifts, and also find us in the Seeker Circle. Okay, so for those of you who have been following along so far, we are on day 15, and I have to say, it is interesting each day. I go through this process of man, I can't believe I've committed to 22 days of podcasting, but I am so thankful that I did because, again, doing it this way with all of you has really kept me accountable to going through this process. So I hope that you are having some useful insights for yourself on this journey, that you are learning some things about you and what you hold, and also considering the tools that you have available to you to help you through this entire process of transformation and self-realization. So we are moving on to the Temperance card today. And yesterday we were looking at the Death card. And we, before that, looked at the Hanged Man. So over the last few days, we've looked at what we've been holding on to, what may be holding us back. We considered yesterday if it was worth holding on to and if we were willing to allow ourselves to just let go, to surrender to whatever change is happening. And today we look at the energy of what happens in the process of rebirth or coming into new awareness. So one of the things with this entire process is it's really helping you to realize and understand your true nature. And our deeper understanding comes as we are ready. So with that, I would also say, once we get through this journey, you may find that you are drawn to go back to a particular card and really sit with the energy or the teaching of that card for a little while longer. And as we go through our entire journey, we will find that different aspects of what we've explored come up. But the beauty is now that we have really allowed ourselves to consider these different energies, to consider the role that we play in all of it, and we have some tools to help support us. Okay, so let's get into Temperance. This card in of itself, the energy of the card is about balance. And the balance really comes in modification or adapting. So again, if you look at everything we've learned so far, and especially after the Death card yesterday, we all know that there is some discomfort sometimes, even after the letting go. Sometimes when we allow ourselves to let go, there is an actual immediate feeling of relief, like a weight off of our shoulders. We're no longer resisting. We feel like we can finally breathe. But sometimes when we let go, there is this discomfort in coming into this new awareness or coming into this space of making the decision that I'm finally going to move ahead differently. So we're going to look at today the energy around modifying or adapting and, allowing ourselves to temper different energies or different aspects of ourselves for balance. Now, the number on this card is the number 14, and we can look at the two numbers individually. We can look at the number 1 as unity, like unifying within ourselves. We can look at the number 4 as the energy of stabilizing. And again, after we allowed ourselves to explore the energy of the Death card, we have to rebalance, stabilize ourselves. And if we add the 1 and the 4 together, we get the number 5, which is change. Change for freedom, allowing ourselves to move into this new space of freedom through our awareness. Now, one of the things I will say again, and I've told you before, we go through cycles of this. So this won't be the only time we go through a cycle of like death, a cycle of rebirth. We keep expanding our awareness as we go. So let's look at how this card really does support us in our journey, in our cycles. First of all, we have the energy of fire and the planet Jupiter represented in this card. And together those speak to the energy of Sagittarius. So the energy of fire we have talked about, it really does speak to the energy of transformation. We can also look at it as the energy of our will or the action that we take. And then Jupiter is a planet of expansion. It's also considered good fortune, Jupiter, but it's really the energy of expansion. And even on the angel's chest, like if you look at the card itself, there is a symbol on the chest. There's a triangle with a square around it. And that triangle pointing up is the alchemical symbol for fire. So something has changed. You have transformed in some way in this work that we've done. Now, one of the main things about this card is, balance, as I said, and we are really looking at how we bring different elements or different aspects into harmony. Now, we could look at that as our ego, our higher self, our feminine and our masculine, like we looked at with the Lover's card. We could look at it as balancing spirit and matter. And even if you look at the angel, they are holding 2 golden goblets. And one goblet can be thought to contain a higher consciousness, and the other one is lower consciousness. But there is a balancing of the two. So even in that symbolism, one thing to ask yourself today is, what are you allowing yourself to acknowledge? And what are you repressing? This energy between the 2 goblets can also be a symbol of the past and the future. We learn from our past if we don't hide from it. There's a lot of teaching, like we learned in the Wheel of Fortune. And how we move forward is really dependent on how we balance today. So this is really about understanding, After we have gone through all that we have gone through, we come into this balancing of our awareness. And even when we think of states of consciousness, there is benefit in our analytical mind. There's benefit in our intuitive minds. We are finding the beauty of being human, of being aware of this realm that we're in, but not being ruled by it. It kind of reminds me of that, there's a saying of, I don't know, I think it might even be in the Bible, but it's like being in the world but not of it. I see a lot of people have that on their bumper stickers. And so it reminds me of this process, because when we do become more aware of ourselves, we also become more aware of the world around us. And what's interesting is that even though our awareness may be lifting, what we view in the world may seem very different at first. But when we start to step out of the judgment and move into a place of understanding, we have more awareness of the field that we're in, but more importantly, we recognize the part that we play and the choice we have in it. So we can be in the world, but not necessarily of it, because we may have a higher perspective, a higher point of view. And in this process, after that cycle of death, you start to step into your new awareness, your new way of being, your new way of thinking, your new way of seeing. And even though, in this space of rebirth, that sounds really beautiful, there really is some rebalancing that has to happen. Because now it's kind of like, you have one foot in the world and one foot in the higher consciousness, just like depicted here in the Temperance card. The angel has one foot in the pool of water and one foot on the land. But one of the most important things is that after our death cycle, after our letting go, we come into that new clarity. And we do have an opportunity to rebalance. So if we look at the angel, there's also the symbol of the sun right at their third eye. See that circle with the dot in the middle? That is a symbol for the sun. And what's interesting is it brings the awareness to thought and also our higher consciousness. And when I look at this card, it makes me think about when we come to this space of asking, what am I doing? Now, what's interesting about that question is we ask it more than once. We ask it before we start seeking, before we start on these spiritual paths. What probably led us here is that very question, what am I doing? What is this life about? Then we start exploring, we start learning new things. It's all exciting, it's all fun. And then again, right before our death cycle, we hit another wall. What am I doing? Because sometimes it feels confusing. And again, because you become more aware, you become aware of your ego, you become aware of your higher self, you become aware of your choice and the hand that you play. And you do have to ask yourself again, what am I doing? So then let's say you hit that wall and you decide, okay, I am going to surrender, I'm going to let go, and you go through your death cycle. Here we are on the other side in that space of rebirth, and when we open our eyes back into another level of new awareness, we ask again, what am I doing? So this question is a great one because it puts us into a space of consideration, not only of the choices that we're making, but also considering how we are playing a part in all of it. So back to the angel, again, I said they have one foot in the water, which could be a symbol of like the universal mind, higher consciousness, and they have one foot on the land, dealing with earthly matter. And that's really, the uniqueness of being human. You hear so many people say we're spiritual beings having a human experience. However you want to frame it, we are so interesting in that we are really the manifestation of universal life force energy. We are that universal consciousness in form. And we are here with the task of having experience to learn to grow while unifying heaven and earth, so to speak. Or I guess I should say realizing that we already are. So it makes this journey, this life experience so interesting, so rich. And yes, sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's easy, but no matter what part of the journey we're in, it is a beautiful experience of learning, of growth, of awakening. So look at the angel. He has on the white robe, which we have seen throughout several cards, and that just speaks to the energy of purity. But if you look over to the left side of the card, you see a pathway. And that pathway is leading from the pool of water off into the mountains. And that path really represents the journey that you've taken to get here. Exactly where you are. No matter where you are on your path, you have learned a lot. You have gone through a lot. You have experienced a lot. Now, how you perceive it all, of course, is key. But you have been on an amazing journey. And sometimes we do have to sit and reflect on, what it did take to get here and what we actually learned along the way. And how things that may have been tough may have been our greatest teachers. We balance through our experience and through our choice. It's almost like we, on some level, are testing ourselves to give ourselves the choice or the opportunity to make different decisions. We're experimenting in a way. So, when you look at this card today, I want you to consider, how do you function after a death cycle? After you've gone through a place of deep surrender, once you've made the choice of letting go, how do you rebalance and how do you function after that? We're looking at these cards one day at a time, but again, you may find that you want to go back and really sit with the energy of these cards individually. And this one really reminds me of it because you do want to kind of take your time in this space of consideration about what it is that you are tempering or balancing for yourself. I'll tell you, one of the things this also reminds me of, one of the death cycles I went through. I've gone through many in this journey. But one of the death cycles I went through that I will never forget is that I was doing this work, practicing, whatever, and I hit one of the spaces of surrender, kind of got slammed into it. I don't remember what it was about specifically, but it was definitely, one of those spaces where you feel like you're falling apart. And I allowed myself to, or I may not have had a choice, I don't know. It was a very clear death cycle. But I came out on the other side of it feeling very neutral. And I will never forget that because in that space of feeling neutral, it's like I wasn't sad, I wasn't happy, I wasn't high, I wasn't low. I was just. I was calm. I was at peace, but there was no feeling that was extreme. And at first it kind of freaked me out because I was like, am I broken? Why don't I feel anything? Like I felt kind of numb, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't like numbness that comes after hurt. It wasn't like numbness trying to block anything. It was really just like equilibrium. Like I just felt really neutral. And it was such a foreign feeling. And then when I realized I'm just not in a space of extreme. I'm sitting in a place of balance. It was really interesting. It was most interesting that it was so foreign. And it made me consider how much we do function in extremes, in this realm of duality. And a lot of times we do function in extreme because it is a way for us to learn. Sometimes we swing all the way right or all the way left. We go deep into extreme emotion. We go deep into making extreme decisions. And a lot of times it's just a way of giving ourselves certain experience or lessons or understanding. But it was such an awkward feeling to be in that space of balance. But what happened was once I recognized what it was I was feeling, my feeling started to come back. You know what I mean? So it's not like my feelings were gone. I still was able to experience, sadness or joy or whatever it may be. But it just, in that time frame, didn't feel as extreme. So again, it was kind of like I was after my death. That was literally the expression of going through this energy of temperance. I had balanced. Now, of course, life happens and I came out of that balance, but it's easier to return to once you've touched it. It's easier to return to once you realize it consciously. So again, it is like we are constantly experimenting. We're trying one thing or another, trying to do things one way or the other. We're trying to see and understand one way or another. We're like, scientists in a way, trying to understand this life experience, trying to understand who and what we are. It just reminds me, I'll tell you really quickly too, I remember when one of my clients went through the same thing, like they had gone through an extreme death cycle and they came out on the other side feeling the same way, kind of like that balance, that calm. And so they called me because they were concerned, like, why do I feel so like, I don't feel extreme anymore. And I said, do you feel at peace? I asked them some questions and they realized that, yeah, they just felt peaceful. And, I told them, now consider how uncomfortable you feel with being peaceful because you're not used to it. And it was really funny and we both had to laugh about it, like the discomfort of being at peace because we're not used to it. So anyway, back to the card. If we look at this pool of water, you can actually remember the going back to the high priestess, there was that flow of water or higher consciousness behind her. She was letting us know that we had access to it, but she was kind of guarding it because we had to access it for ourselves. Well, here we are, right here. And if you look at the blue mountains in the background, it's almost as if like this higher consciousness has come to a peak, right? You have this new peak of awareness. It doesn't mean you've reached like enlightenment or like the highest state of awareness, but you have reached a new peak of awareness in your journey. And that sun in the background, like we've seen throughout, of course, is a symbol of higher consciousness or higher awareness. This is all about finding balance within yourself through your process of transformation. Now, in this card, we have symbolism of all of the elements. We have water, which is, obviously there. We have the triangle, which again is a symbol of fire. We have the square around the triangle, which is a symbol of earth, but there's also so much earth in the picture itself. And we also have this attention at the angel's third eye, which is, thought. And thought is associated with the element of air. So this card, again, is reminding us to balance our mind, balance our emotion, our will, and what it is that we are creating and how we are experiencing. So here you are at Temperance. You've made it to the water or the stream of consciousness that was behind the high priestess. And now you're invited to use those tools of the magician, but with more awareness and with more understanding after all that you have gone through, after this journey that you took. If you look back at the death card, you remember that there was... Actually, let me look at the death card. If you look at the death card, we saw the sun peaking behind those two towers. And now imagine that, you went through the death cycle and here you came down this path towards this pool of water. It's showing that you made it. You reached a new level of understanding. This is healing after the huge transformation or the death cycle that you allowed. And all of this came after having the courage, remember the strength card, having the courage to look in the mirror, which was our justice card, and going your own way, the Hierophant. acknowledging what it is you hold in the Wheel of Fortune. And, we could go through all of the cards. There were so many lessons within these last 15 days of self-examination that led you right here into this space of clarity. You probably have more clarity about what you hold. And again, the hand that you play in it all. Outside of our extremes, we balance. We test the waters. And after, this cycle of death, when we come into this space of rebirth, you really do want to be patient with yourself. Because sometimes, just like we spoke about with the death card yesterday, it's like the phoenix rising. Sometimes it feels like we have crumbled, we have hit rock bottom, and now we have to come back up for air. And now we have to figure it out. How do we function after coming out of an old way of being? How do we learn how to use our tools differently? Again, we experiment. We call forward lessons to give us an opportunity to test out how we can play with these things differently. You may call forward people, circumstances that give you an opportunity to say, okay, how are you going to deal with this time? Your old way or from a space of new awareness and understanding? How are you going to balance your mind, your emotion, your will, your action that you take? You're learning so much. I think sometimes we take for granted just how much we are actually learning in this process. But the beauty is now, through all that you've been through, you are better prepared for whatever is to come. This is the space today where we re-examine. We re-examine to harmonize. Notice if there are any extremes. Are you still in a space of extreme emotion? How do you temper that? Are you in extreme thought, like being too heady, too analytical, not tapping into your intuitive mind? How do you temper that? Are you not grounded? How do you temper that? What is going on that you recognize as an area where you can balance to better support yourself for your own healing? This card has so much energy of healing. Healing after that death cycle. Healing in the space of rebirth. Acknowledging how much you have grown. And now your awareness to use the natural gifts you have to support you through this journey. So, there's so much beautiful energy in this card. I mean, it really, really is just beautiful. I think because it speaks so much to the support that we have through all of this. And the greatest part of it is that, you're the one doing it all. You are the one who has made it through whatever it is you have gone through. You are the one who has a choice and is making the decision right now of what to do next on your path of self-discovery. All roads lead back to you. And you also have this beautiful opportunity to just chill and let yourself rebalance and heal through it all. So that's all for the Temperance card today. Really consider what you are re-examining, what you are balancing. And as always, if you do want to join us in the Seeker Circle, you can go to my website, yew-chi.com. That's YEWCHI.com. And join us there. There's one thing that's popping out. I don't know why the Jupiter is coming up again to say. Another thing to go into consideration today is what it is that you may be expanding in your life. Is it that you are expanding this energy of balance and harmony, or are you expanding one thing or another that may be causing extreme? So that's it. I look forward to exploring with you tomorrow. Tomorrow we have the Devil card, and but whatever. We will have a Facebook Live today in the Secret Circle. So if you do want to join us for that, be sure to join us as soon as possible so you can be there for the live event. That's it, everyone. Have a beautiful day, and remember to always journey in love.